What's going on, everyone? This is Keith with Nighthawk Alliance. You're watching Overwatch now. And today we have a very special guest. We've got Chad with Trigger Jerk. Him and I, we both served in the Navy for, I served for 10. How long did you do? You were like up at 15, right?
13 years, 3
13.
months.
There you go. And we were both at boot camp. I think you and I were up there, almost 3 years together, right?
Yeah, about that time.
Awesome. So go ahead, kind of introduce yourself and what Trigger Jerk is to the community.
All right, so Chad with Trigger Jerk, like he said, I did about 13 years, 3 months in as a military. Most of my time there was spent in firearms. When I got out of the military, I wanted to kind of stay in that community, so I worked at a couple of different ranges and eventually opened up my own company. I found there was a need for somebody that actually had a very deep understanding of firearms as far as how to manipulate them. That most instructors out there were given very generic information and stuff like that, and not really given the money's worth. So I ended up, after getting out of the military, I attended about 18 different schools in a matter of 3 years, spent about $25,000 to $30,000 of my own money to get some information from some of the industry's best to bring back to my people. So most of what I focus on is performance-driven stuff, moving fast, shooting really far, going outside the norms, breaking a lot of shooting myths, stuff like that. But yeah, that's my specialty, just really pushing the boundaries of shooters and kind of open their eyes on things that they have the potential to do but didn't realize it. Saw your video you just posted yesterday.
Yeah, what'd you think?
Yeah, no, it was pretty good as well edited. It looked really good.
Yeah, it's a little bouncy. Um, but I had the camera set up like on the table, so every time I moved my arm and it just shook. And I tried to remove that as much as I could, but I was like, damn.
I didn't even really notice it.
Well, that's good. That's good. Um, yeah, now I just got to do the hard part starting tomorrow morning.
What starts tomorrow morning?
The actual kettlebell stuff.
Oh, yeah, the actual kettlebell stuff. Yeah, I've got my kettlebell over here. I haven't touched in a while. I got one of those I forget what it's called, but it's got the ones where you can add more weight, take it away, and a little thing that spins that holds up the weight. It goes up to like 100 pounds or some shit like that.
Gotcha. Is it like the Bowflex?
Oh, flex. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah,
Because don't they have like dumbbells too, where like you twist
maybe.
it
Yeah, I think so, actually.
and you
Yeah,
can
I
change
just
the
have the
weight?
kettlebell version. And I think we stole it from my mother-in-law
I'd be so
because I know
afraid.
I wouldn't drop money on that.
I'd be so afraid one of those weights would slide off as you're swinging it.
That's one thing I'm very careful. I don't like to lift it up over my head. I'll swing it around because it'll go the other way. But if it's above my head, it'll fall right on top of me. So yeah, I don't really do that very often. I don't really
Us.
use kettlebells very often, regardless. I did mostly calisthenics before my shoulder went to crap. But
God.
what's what do we want to talk about today?
Well, I'm getting the thing pulled
Oh, you're
up.
pulling it up. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Um,
I already told you about the tactical hive thing, right? All the instructors are failing.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited to get on board with that, see how it fared compared to the other 140 instructors that didn't pass.
I mean, from what I remember, I mean, and obviously I've seen more of your shooting now that you're posting trigger jerk stuff online. But I don't know what their course entails. So I guess I'd have to go and look and see what is all, but I think you'll be all right, man.
For
Um,
shooting, I'm definitely all right. It's the occasionally I trip over words ordeal, and that would be the only thing that I'm worried about. But other than that, I think I'll do pretty solid. Not too worried about it. I actually just established a team of guys that are going to be. There's two other guys so far. We're actually going to meet at the end of this month and kind of rehearse and go over some things. And one guy's already been through the whole system and failed out, so he knows exactly what they're looking for.
gotcha.
So I'm excited with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really gonna have to go and watch some of their stuff and just see what they have. I know I keep seeing their ads pop up on Facebook saying, be a tactical hive instructor, and I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I'm super cautious, and I mean, kind of like you said last time we talked. Anything mainstream is usually not the best, and not to say that they're mainstream, at least not yet. Um, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, I think the thing that turned me off was tactical. I just
Yeah, and I agree with that. But they don't actually do a whole lot of tactical stuff, or I mean, no more than any other uh industry, former military company out there. So it's not like they're running around with nods on their head doing, some covert type training type stuff. But, they do have that tacticalness where they're integrating AR and pistols and that type of thing. Are they the best to be affiliated with? I'm not sure on that. We'll see what comes with them, but they're holding their guys, their instructors to a very high standard, which I certainly respect.
oh
And
yeah.
that's what I'm kind of looking forward to is just seeing how I favor on there and maybe put a little bit of money in my pocket. The other added bonus is this is as they fill those classes and I teach that class, those are people that I can do one-on-ones with me that are local to me. So that's more money into my pocket if I can get two guys out of a 10 guy class to do a one-on-one with me.
Yeah. I mean, and
So that's
that's
kind of the idea behind it.
and for me, that was kind of the big push I had and um why I wanted to affiliate with US Law Shield is
Mhm.
to get the state to approve your online licensed carry class. It is such a pain. And the fact that they offer that for instructors already. So now I just have to do the back end of the actual proficiency. There's still an hour of training I have to do on the range with the student. And then we do their LTC test. And it's just something I can add to our pistol classes. So if we're already doing our pistol one, like, hey, if you don't have your LTC already, go take the online class and or run you through the proficiency before the day starts. Um,
Good stuff.
so we had the three pillars of shooting, dry fire
Yeah, the three
practice.
pillars: grip, sights, and trigger.
There we go. So you don't mess with stance much?
So I don't what?
Mess with stance much?
So I don't even really honestly, I'll do a basic like on a 101, I'll do a quick this is what I do stance. But honestly, it's just more about feeling natural than it is. And that comes pretty natural to most people. When it comes to stance, though, and I demonstrate what stance I'm talking about, you'll see that a lot of people have a very weird and awkward, just regular natural stance as well. Like their head will lean to the right and their shoulder will be lower, the right shoulder will be lower than the left shoulder, and their hips are off. And it's like, that's your natural stance? No, stand up straight, straighten your back, put your shoulders even, arms should be equal length out. But that honestly, at some points in time, can be kind of hard for people to grasp as well because they've been having that lean in their head for 20 years and they feel that is natural because of bad posture or whatever. So that's something
Yeah.
I often have to crack, but I don't really dig deep into the stance. As long as you have a stable upper body, the lower body doesn't really matter. I can stand on one leg and shoot bullseyes all day.
You're right. Um, so I focus on stance. One, I think like you said, a lot of people just have poor posture.
Mhm.
Or they're really not paying attention to what they're doing to begin with. Because like you said, I mean, look, if I'm running and gunning or shooting behind a barricade, I'm going to be in weird, funky stances. And I think just learning the fundamental of a solid base versus, well, this is the stance you need to be in, but understanding what body configuration you're in and where those forces go when you pull the trigger. So Oh, when I go over the fundamentals, and I still use 4 instead of 3 because I include the stance. I always tell everyone I start from, let's say, the least important, and then we work our way up to the most important, which ends up with trigger control.
Mhm.
I usually go with stance, grip, side alignment, and then trigger control. No, sorry, I go side alignment, grip. No, I had it right. So stance, grip, side alignment, trigger control. A trigger control just being the one that, like, everyone messes up the most.
Yeah, the trigger control definitely plays a big part in the shooting aspect, and if your trigger control's not on point, it really doesn't help you to focus on anything else at that point. Um, Trigger trolls, people tend to pick up pretty quickly. I always kind of just relay it. Prep the trigger, and for the first couple of range trips, just pull it slowly and consistently pull it to the rear as slow as you can. Even if it takes you 6 seconds from the prep position, what we want to do is ingrain to our brain that we
Yep.
don't need to overdrive that trigger with too much pressure. That can cause several shooting related errors. But Trigger control certainly, once you master that, rolls over to every other platform as well, which is really nice. Like, I'll tell you, I don't really shoot 5.56 a whole lot, but I still dry fire the crap out of the rifle. But when I do wanna hop on a 5.56 platform, I really see no loss or degradation of anything fundamental or accuracy wise, just because I shoot so much pistol. And again, that trigger manipulation rolls over to every other platform.
So that's at least down here in Texas. I'm sure you probably see it up. Well, maybe not in Chicago, just because of all the crazy assault bans, and it's here and it's there. And
Mhm.
um, down here, I don't know what it is, man. Rifle is the sexy class. I
It
try
is.
trying to get people to show up for a pistol class is so hard, and for me, pistol is so much harder to master than rifle. Now, it's different if we're talking like known distance or distance shooting, completely different animal. But if we're talking tactical shooting or within 100 or 200 yards, man, rifles, I can teach someone rifle pretty quickly. But to master the pistol and then be able to roll that over to the rifle makes so much more difference, I think.
Well, I think you got the Dunning-Kruger effect going on with a lot of people out there, and they just simply have been doing pistols so long that they feel like they've maxed it out, that they can't get any better because they don't know any better. You can't work upon what you don't know, and I fell under that category as well. I was just another military instructor opening his business. Luckily, I decided to take a bunch of classes, and then right around the time I was opening a business, I'm like, "Whoa, what is this new fast-paced shooting where I can actually go move really fast and shoot really fast and still have a great accuracy?" This was unknown to me throughout the military world because I was always told slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and I was always just trying to go fast at a point that it made sense. Little did I know that when I went to a class, they taught me, "Hey, just go fast, and then, in dry fire, and then when you feel comfortable, add some live range to it." And that's where I saw the benefits of actually going fast. All those things that I saw in the videos, that the military didn't teach me, it started to make more sense. I just started doing it, doing it, doing it, and I'd film myself trying to eliminate any of the wonkiness and stuff like that I saw in the video until it became fairly smooth. And then from there, just start working on it, and then another big one for me was not over confirming things. You'll see a lot of people as they bring that red dot or front sight up, they try to get it exactly where it needs to be, and then they slow process the trigger pull. That takes forever, man. In a defensive situation, you don't have that time. So dot acquisition and not over confirming your dot were big, big things that I are new things that I learned. Um, like we were talking about the other day, the military 2 rounds in 4 seconds, 2 rounds to 4 seconds. When we stuck to that 4 seconds, we saw probably 60 to 70% failure rate. So
Yeah.
we, as instructors, to get people through, had to extend that 4 seconds at times with particular people because they just didn't simply have the proficiency of moving that fast. To make your brain move that fast, take some incentive. You have to train that brain to do that.
Oh yeah, trust the dot. I find myself saying that over and over and over again, even to myself, because sometimes maybe I'm having a bad day at the range and I'm not hitting the way I want to. So now I start second guessing it, and like you said, over confirming the dot. I'm like, no, dude, just trust the dot. The dot's where I need it to be. Take the shot. It's everything else that I'm doing wrong. It's not the dot. It's my trigger control. It's my grip. Something else is off. It's not the dot. Trust the dot. Where the dot is where the round's gonna go.
Yeah, and the one thing to note about the dot too, what's great about the dot, this is something Scott Jelinski always says, but what's great about the dot is it goes where you're looking. What's bad about the dot? It goes where you're looking. So if you're not looking where you need to be looking, you're already setting yourself up for failure. And vision in itself is just something that a lot of people underutilize in these shooting performance. And just like any other thing, we should be dry fire training it and trying to enhance it, finding things, reacting quicker, stuff like that. These all play a part in moving through your echelon of stages through your shooting time. Like that's an important factor.
Okay. So we've got the other pillars. I think we just kind of hammered home on trigger control quite a bit. So what do you want to say, and what are your other pillars that you're running out there?
So, like I said, grip, sights, trigger, grip being the most important. Once you set a good foundation with that grip, that's really what matters because at that point, vision comes into play and it's going to point as long as you have good grip, that gun's going to point exactly where you want it. That gun's going to be predictable and it's going to go exactly where you need it. And that's another part of into the fast mode is knowing things are going to be where they need to be when you need them to be there. Sights is part of the three pillars. We always want to, achieve a higher level of sight confirmation, not over confirm the dot or the front sight. During rapid fire, we should be looking for the streak of the dot, not a solid dot. These are three things. There's three different sight images that you would typically see in a moving dot. So, or in a dot in general. So you got the moving dot, the static dot, and the streak of the dot. And you really got to understand what those visuals looks like at speed in order to achieve that speed. And then trigger, like we were already honed on, is that's important. We're not bouncing that trigger around in different directions, causing this gun to oscillate in our hands. Once we learn trigger control, I think a lot of things start to come and start to make sense. But I think one of the biggest things that we need to focus on is grip. And then from there, my next thing to focus on is really the trigger, because sights just kind of come naturally. Once you understand it, you understand it. And then once you've developed and honed the other two, then we can start working on sites and quicker acquisitions and stuff like that.
So I think the thing, and we talked about it last time, and I know we keep referencing the old one, but for me, I think it's one of the things students have a hard time with, at least comprehending long term, is the sites. I think they know how to use them, but they're not looking at them for the feedback. So you were talking about the dot, whether it be a moving dot, static dot, or the streak. The moving dot's obviously just the dot that's moving. The static is it staying still, and then the streak is after the shot breaks. What does that swirl
Mhm.
do? Just like you're playing with a laser pointer. Like if I move it a little bit, you kind of see the dot move. If I'm able to hold it super still, it stays still. But if I move it quick, you get that twirl. What is that twirl doing? I think even with iron sights, most people they're more worried about the initial before the shot breaks, and they're not paying attention to the sights for them to tell them where that shot went so they can call their shots a, "Hey, where'd that go?" That twirl, that streak, like you said, is gonna tell you exactly, "Hey, where did it go? What happened after the shot broke?" So,
Yeah,
yeah.
last known location of where your front sight or your red dot was upon detonation of the round is really the important factor of determining whether you missed or hit. And that comes with time, rounds down range. Eventually, in time, you'll learn that, hey, I jerked my trigger, didn't have the grip to support it. It shot a little left. Last known location of that dot on detonation of the round was left. And if I'm in a competition mode, I'll know that I can reshoot that. Or if I'm in defensive mode, I know I can continue to how to correct that quickly and get it back on target. But that's also a very important factor of knowing where that shot goes and understanding why it went there.
Yeah, so weirdly enough, I think the first time, me identifying and being able to call my shot, we were testing, we were doing the T&E for the Scar Heavy, no, maybe it was the Scar Light, but we were out at the range and we had it was light because it was the Elcan 1x4, um,
Mhm.
and having that magnification and seeing the shot break and where the reticle was before the shot broke and detonated, like you said, that was the moment that it clicked. I was like, "Oh," and was able to carry it over to iron sights, optics. I think maybe just having the extra zoom to see, like, where it went, shot broke because I had jerked, so it dropped low left, and I was like, "Oh," and then that's where the round wound up. I'm like, "Oh, damn, alright." So, of all things, yeah, testing the scar head or the scar lights was when I was first like, "Oh, damn, alright."
Yeah, man, I had some time on those scars out in Iraq with Team 3, and they were pretty awesome. But yeah, honestly, the really only way to get to the point where you can call those shots is just round down range. Like, there's
Yeah.
not a simple trick that I can go over or tell
No.
you about to help you with that. It's just experience on gun, time on gun, and really looking and knowing what you need to do to figure those things out. And like you said, light bulb moment when something clicks, it's always a satisfying feeling like, oh my gosh, this is what he's talking about, or this makes sense, or something along those lines. It's just a light bulb moment. And that's a big moment for people. And then it also opens up other avenues to explore things that, maybe you've heard about or something of that nature that didn't make sense. Now you're traveling down that road.
Yeah, I think another aha moment for me was consistently finding the dot for my pistol. Um, it took me watching a John Level video where he started talking about it, where As he's punching out, he leaves front sight tip just a little bit high, and as he's driving out and flattens out, it's when that dot whoop right back into place. I mean, before I was like everybody else had punch out, and now I'm doing all of it.
Mhm.
So, man, as soon as it clicks, it's crazy. I love that. I love it, and I love when a student gets that aha moment where they finally everything you've been trying to drive for an hour, and they like, 3 rounds, and all of a sudden they're like, did you just like, yeah, like, ah, yes, I love it.
Yeah, like you were saying, coming down from 12 or coming up from 6, that's an important part of the draw as well, is understanding where that dot's gonna be coming from, whether it's a drop from 6 or up from 6 or a drop from 12, like you were just saying. But, those are big moments in people's lives where they actually start noticing different things is when they notice those things, they start noticing other things as well. Because it means you're just simply getting more in tune with that gun. You're spending the time on that gun that you need to. And we're talking about finding the dot, that's the downfall of the dot initially is you have to understand what that dot is doing. It's a self-leveling piece, optical system. And if we're not level with our eye, then we're not going to know find where that dot is. Once you understand that and you practice and you get that dot where it needs to be every single time, that's where speed comes from. If I have to wait to like over confirm a dot because it's not there when it should be there, that's not consistency. And I've got to build that consistency to know that that dot's going to be there 100% of the time.
Yep.
And once that comes, that's when the speed comes. A lot of people just like, you're seeing that dot and confirming it that quick. Yes and no. Like, I might be prematurely coming up on that dot, but I'm getting a glare of it by the time it reaches my eye, and I'm initiating that trigger as quick as possible. And that's how you get those sub seconds 0.85 draws. Until you learn to do that, those are going to be foreign to you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I am getting so many update notifications. I'm on a different laptop I usually don't use, and it's freaking out with all the updates.
No.
Uh, yeah, I think, man, bring back the military thing. I think the military helped, but it definitely had hindered and held me back in a lot of ways. Because, like you said, I was following a lot of the mantra: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I mean, when I was doing my handgun qualifications, I was moving quick, but I was definitely moving slow, especially compared to now. I mean, one, trying to make sure I'm making the use of it, using irons, and moving to the dot. I noticed I got so much faster than even going back to irons. I noticed I didn't lose much speed going backwards. So just being able to trust, and I think that was probably part of the problem I had, even while I was in the Navy, was oh, I got to make sure my sights are exactly where I like just micro
Mhm.
analyzing everything instead of trusting that they were where I needed them to be. I wasn't a green shooter. I wasn't brand new anymore. So there was no reason for me to just spend as much time as I was doing aligning the sight after every shot just to make sure it was the perfect shot. Um, I was wasting, hundreds and thousands of seconds that were just ticking away. And I think adding the dot definitely it changed something. Of now I'm trusting it. I'm moving faster than I had been moving before, so it's a good change.
Yeah, so one thing that comes with the speed is I think that I didn't think about when in the military was not just moving faster, but also doing things sooner. Like, where am I prepping my hand for the support hand on an outside the waistband rig? I was always told to keep it centralized in the chest, but when I went to these higher end, high level classes, they're like, why are you doing that? Put it over closer to the gun. That way you can marry those hands quicker. It was things like that that I didn't really explore when I was in the military, didn't really think to explore them, but as I got out and I started shooting with other people, diversifying my shooting group with different levels of just not military, but competition, just avid shooters, guys that were better than me. And that's where I started to learn a lot of these little tricks of the trade and that hadn't made it to the military. Um, and that's where I really, like I said, just kind of saw the explosion in my groups and my speed and everything. But it's not just moving faster, but simply just doing things sooner. Why wait? So, like for instance, when I was working, when I started getting to actually knowing my times and speeds and stuff, I would go off a timer. I found myself going at the end of the beep instead of the start of the beep and I didn't know that until I posted a video online and everybody's like, "Hey, you're starting after the beep. Try to get in there before the beep and that'll knock off point 0.1, point 0.2 seconds." And I'm like, "Huh, that's a good idea. Why didn't I think of that? Why am I starting so late? I need to start moving as soon as I hear any hint of that beep." Just like, in a real world scenario, I'm getting an audio signal, or I'm sorry, or a visual signal
Visual.
versus an audio signal. And yeah, that's something I need to be training. And if I'm waiting till the end of the beep, I'm probably going to be wait till later on in the action if somebody's trying to do me harm instead in the beginning because I haven't trained myself to start moving quicker and process quicker.
So, uh, you probably know better than I. Is it the cowboy action shooting where they're shooting the wax at those pieces of steel that have the light that comes on?
Yep.
I can't remember. Is there an audio signal with that as well, or is it just pure light?
It's pure lead once it hits the thing, I believe, and then you get your score. So it's not audio. Because I remember CJ at 5 Star, he actually built his own, and I was talking to him about this. Yeah, all it is a piece of wax that comes out. It hits a particular size square, and if it hits, it lights up, and you got a hit.
Yep. Yeah, because I think what they it starts flashing, and then once you get a hit, it stays solid. I can't remember. I've seen a bunch of videos of it, like the world's fastest and all that stuff. Um, I think for defensive shootings, yeah, the beat probably does trick your brain and do something else. Like you said, you're not moving. You're waiting for that auditory signal. So now, coming from the security or defensive standpoint, is it what am I waiting for now? Am I waiting to see the presence of the weapon? Are they charging at me? Just yeah, trying to find ways to move faster and I guess kind of predict. You know that beep's coming. You know that threat's probably there to begin with. So yeah, as soon as they engage, whether it be audio, visual, start moving, right?
Yeah, start moving, start processing, and just start simply working on doing things sooner. Quick,
Yeah.
not just quicker, but sooner.
I don't know. I think being an instructor, especially at boot camp, it definitely helped me because I will say going in, I was an okay shot. I wasn't going to the range very much. I knew what I was doing. I mean, I could walk away with a 236 on a qual before. After being an instructor there, then it was just the consistent perfect score, 248. But I think we became experts in what we were teaching, and we were teaching to the most basic level shooter to begin with. So we got really good at looking and performing well doing the very basic stuff without ever challenging anything else. So I think it definitely had put me in a rut of just, yep, this is what we do. I'm a really good motto shooter.
Completely agree with that. I mean, I think that's very well said. The other thing that I gained while being at RTC was watching all these guys, how they held the gun, how they pulled the trigger, and correlating to how it impacted the target. And that helped me to devise a like a rhythmatic type of interest in it where I could actually see patterns in the target and would give me clues of what possibly they were doing wrong. And I use that currently today, and I always use that as a helpful way of determining what did you do during these 5 rounds that caused these 5 rounds to go where they did. And without that time on gun and watching the amount of people that we were qualifying, I don't think I would really have that ability, or at least not have the great understanding of it that I believe I have without all that exposure to it. Because that was a lot of gun exposure, watching new people not shooting, take a 45-minute course, come in, shoot. Obviously, there's going to be flaws. Some instructors are better than others. And just being able to get that ability to just watch them and watch how they yank the trigger, the loose grip, lack of support hand pressure, stuff like that, over tensioning the hand, and just kind of go into there and say, hey, we need to relax this and increase this, be a little faster, make sure you bring the gun all the way up, stuff like that. That was the biggest gain I've got from RTC.
I would say target diagnosis is probably the thing I learned the most.
Yeah.
And learning not to be that guy that just repeats the same thing to someone over and over and over again. Yeah, we saw it over and over. Just no, the shooter themselves weren't improving, and the instructor was just, oh, well, equal height, equal light. constant trigger squeeze. Like they weren't actually getting in there with them to see what they were doing or walk them through the steps. They were just diarrhea of the mouth, regurgitating the stuff they had heard somebody else said, whether or not their advice correlated to the issue at all. I mean, you'd see someone that had, the peppering all over the target like they were shooting buckshot, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's sight alignment," and like, well, there's probably more than just sight alignment there. Let's figure it out. But they're just standing there looking at the monitor, telling them, like, "Come on, like, actually get in, diagnose something." And I don't know, maybe at the end of the day, it was just laziness, or they just never learned. I mean, I think a lot of the military schools, they definitely they gave you enough knowledge to be dangerous, but they didn't give you the true breakdown. At least that's what I felt with like Sammy. Sammy, it taught you how to teach a class, but nothing about Sammy was actually getting in and diagnosing the shooter and what they're doing wrong. It was just, oh, well, here's the qualification. Um, go run it, and that was it. Like there was no teaching how to diagnose what that shooter was doing wrong.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really remember much teaching at all for Sammy when it come to actually getting in depth in the pistol. It's the overall generic, take your hands, wrap around pistol, pull trigger. It was generic stuff like that. It didn't tell me, hey, I need to be this pressure with this or that pressure with that, or leverage on the trigger, or how fast I'm pulling the trigger can cause this to happen. There was none of that.
Mm-mm.
And I think Sammy is a small organization trying to qualify a lot of people, and they just don't simply have the time. But also, I don't think they have the knowledge to do that either. Um, you're having non shooter people trying to become shooters in a generic
Mhm.
organization teaching generic information, and I think that's kind of a disaster in the long run. Like, there's only a few more things we could actually change in the curriculum that I think we would actually see a better explosion and better shooters. If we just changed a few things and got more in depth of why we do what we do versus this is how you do it. Because this is how I does it doesn't work for everybody. But if you explain why I do it this way, they understand what needs to happen and why I do it my particular way. And then they can find their workaround
Yep.
to do it the way they need to do it to make it work for them. Because everybody's hands are different size, everybody's finger strengths are different size. Can't tell you how many 5'2" girls would come in, and I would have to tell them, hey, you're gonna have to use two fingers to pull that trigger because your one finger doesn't have the 16-pound finger strength to pull that Beretta trigger. That's a heavy trigger. And honestly, in my opinion, the Beretta wasn't the best pistol for the service for universal
Yep.
reasons. Because that grip was super big. It didn't fit my hand. I learned to manage well with it and do the best I could. But I will tell you, like a striker fire that fits my hand, I will always outperform a double action Beretta who it's too big for my hands. It's the way physics works. I can only get so much pressure in certain places due to the size of my hand. And that grip was just overall way too big.
So the grip fit my hands pretty well, but I've got some bear paws.
If
Uh,
you had normal hands, I think you were fine. But let's face it, the military is different. Is nothing normal about it. You get all kinds of variations of
of
people.
course. I mean, I think the only thing I really liked about the Beretta for training purposes, and it was personal, and we talked about it last time, was just the double action. Was getting really good with that double action pull every single time. And I think that helped me figure out trigger control more than anything else, was just being able to work my way through. If the sights moved, hold what I had, realign the sights, finish the shot. But other than that, no, I mean, dude, we got every time I go to a gun store, someone's like, "Oh, you were in the military, so what do you think about the Beretta?" And every time it brings up that conversation. I'm like, "Look, I don't love it, nor do I hate it. I think it's got its problems. It's got, Beretta could probably do some design differential with that locking block, but overall, I mean, I don't know. I've never had a truly bad experience with it other than the quality control and them breaking. But like I said, I've got big hands. It fit my hands well enough, I guess. um, but the only thing I really enjoyed was being able to train with it and do that double action over and over and over again. And I think that was part of the reason why I went and I turned around and I got the SIG 226. Was it was a better platform. I think it fit my hands even better than the Beretta did, and I still got to play around with that double action over and over and over again while I'm just sitting there practicing.
I agree with you. Learning how to double action because that trigger is much harder to master has value over any other gun. Like, because it's going to roll over. It takes a lot of trigger control to not slam that double action trigger to the rear so hard that it causes your front sight to shoot low left as a right-handed shooter. So learning to master that rolls over to a striker and certainly a single action. My only downfall of the single action, or the reason I would never run a single action, is I hate safeties on carry guns. That's just my personal thing. There's nothing specific as a downfall for like why nobody else should. It's just not for me. But running that double action and learning how to prep that trigger and get that hammer to the rear by the time you're at full extension at a fast pace is an amazing feat in itself. And there's not actually a lot of people that can do that, especially in a sub-second draw. So there's definitely value there. And if you master, like I said, that double action, that's awesome, man. That's legit good stuff right there.
Yeah,
Because it
that
is
was
the hardest platform to master.
I said and that was my only favorite thing. I mean, I used to tell recruits while I was teaching, I was like, "Look, there is a tile in my bathroom that has a billion figurative rounds through it just because I'm sitting there going click, click, click." Um, so for me, and man, that rolls right into I guess our next topic was the dry fire and why it matters.
Yeah, so dry fire is one of those things that I push a lot and often. And you don't have to do it for hours throughout the day. In fact, physically, you can if you're doing it correctly. But what I tell people is if you do dry fire, I can get about 65 reps done in 5 minutes of a draw trigger press. So if you do that over, 10 to 15 minutes for a week, you're talking a lot of on time gun, increasing the muscle memory and understanding what needs to happen to make the bullet go where you want. That's sticking better into the brain because you're doing it more often. But doing that dry fire and then ultimately knowing how to do dry fire properly, such as if I go to the range and I shoot 300 rounds, I'm trying to take the top three things that I was delinquent on, and then I'm just simply going to go home and I'm going to practice that in a dry fire setting. There might be times where I do dry fire from the appendix all the way to full extension, and there's times where I'll break that down to 8, 10 different sequences where if there's something in particular during that long sequence that I'm delinquent in, I'm just going to focus on that one delinquent part. And then once I feel like I've got it to a decent deal, I'm going to add it back into the full regiment and continue doing that until I've got it exactly where I want. But I think the biggest thing I see with dry fire is people being lazy. They're not putting the proper tension on the gun with the support hand. They're being weak-handed. They're not coming up with the intent of actually shooting a imaginary round. But I think a lot of people just end up doing dry fire wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just that's why I have a love-hate relationship with dry fire. I think it's that thing that'll take your skills from 0 to hero, but it's also that thing if you're doing it wrong, when you go do it for real, you're gonna go, "What the hell's going on? I do all this dry fire practice, but I'm still all low left and all" like, it's because you're laissez-faire? Fair term, right? You're just going through the motions. You're not treating it like it matters, or you're not diagnosing what you're doing. Um, there's a lot of the gimmicky tools like the mantis or put a quarter on it and just pay attention to your sights. What is the dot doing? What is the front sight doing between the field goal post of your rear sight? Uh, but dry fire practice, man, it's so critical to be able to take those skills, and it's free. It's
I'm telling you,
free.
if you could go 3 to 4 months without shooting, and if you dry fired 5 minutes, 3 days a week, I'd be willing to bet you could stay at the level you were before you quit, before you stopped shooting, probably even progress in the movement and fundamental aspects of things because you've got more time on gun without rounds and recoil, trying to really diagnose and look deep into what's going on with that thing in your hands as you start manipulating doing things. So, like, if you can't go to the range every month, pick up the gun once or twice a week. Remind yourself what you need to do to make those good, accurate hits. There was a cool video. I think we've talked about this once, where T-Rex Arms actually brought in a Japanese kid that airsofted a lot. Was
Yeah, I've
really,
seen that
really good at
video.
airsoft, and you could see the structure and his stance and how he was manipulating. All that was perfect. He had never shot a live gun before. So the moment they put a live gun in his hand, there was a little, push forward, anticipation, and unknowingness because of the recoil. But once he understood recoil, he was at a level that took most shooters probably 5 to plus 10 years to achieve, and he had gotten there in 2 hours because he had already practiced all those reps and had manipulation, good form, good everything from the YouTube videos he watched or whatever training that he got there. But yeah, I mean, his level exploded.
Yeah, I have seen that video, and yeah, some recoil anticipation, the stuff you're gonna see with a brand new shooter anyway that, they don't know what to expect. So I've seen a lot of times the first round they shoot is a rocket. It's perfect. And
Yeah.
then the follow-up round, low left, the follow-up round, even lower left because 'cause they're still freaking out. Um, and that's why a lot of times, especially if I have a brand new shooter, like brand new, not even like brand new to me, just brand new shooter, I'll put 1 round in the mag and just be like, "All right, let's see what we do." Um, 1, it gets rid of the happy dance risk of, I did it," and they start but
Yep.
I wanna be able to break it down and be like, "All right, how'd that feel? What did you notice?" And talk them through it, and then create a gap between that next round so they kind of forget about the recoil as we go back into it again. That's one of the things I try to do. Like I said, one for safety, because I mean, how many times did we see recruits turn around with a firearm or just get excited? You're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!"
Yep. More often than I'd like to admit.
Oh, it I see it at the range now as it blows my mind as security officers that are armed, at least in Texas. I mean, they have to go through a 46-hour course, but that course is mostly, the do's and don'ts, the stuff you're allowed to do as a security officer. There's like maybe an hour out of that 46 hours that actually talks about firearms and firearm safety. But so many people coming through, it's the first time they've touched a gun, or when they did get their license, they had an instructor that just didn't care and passed them whether they deserved to pass or not. So now they're coming out to us. And for the company I work for full time, we have a higher standard than what the state minimum is. So the state minimum is 175, and they shoot at 3, 7, and 15. We take a similar course of fire, but they shoot at 7, 10, and 15 and have to score a minimum of a 213. So we get so many people that come to us that the moment they lose that 100 points at 3 yards because it got pushed out to 7, they're not making it. And
And
it
they get to
it
use the gun they wanna use, right? Is there a standardized gun, or they get to shoot whatever they want?
So for the company, they have to shoot the firearm that they're going to carry on duty. That's kind of our requirement. So this way, we know you've qualified. You know how to handle the gun that you have. And as long as we can get a level 3 holster for it that's non-Serpa, then we'll allow it. I guess they're even making level 3 Taurus holsters now. Found that
Really?
out. Yeah. You can go get a G2 or G3C, level 3 holster. I was like, that's okay. It's not a duty gun, but okay."
Now it makes me wanna go pick up a CCY and see if I can find a level 3 holster for that.
I mean, it might fit the Taurus holster, man. I'll have to uh, I'll have to go find that link. They had sent it to me to show me because 'cause they're like, "Well, will this work?" And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I guess we can order one and see." I mean, it is level 3. It's a level 3, but it's
Well,
got a
what's
s
funny is, back in the day, 6, 7 years ago, I ran a 3.65, 3.7 inch barrel outside the waistband in a thigh rig, and finding a holster that would fit that was an anomaly. I had to pay a guy custom money. I think it was like $350 that I paid for a 3.65 generic outside the waistband holster, because it was such an anomaly. Now with the Fusion 365 is coming out, and they actually kind of more standardize it outside, it makes sense with a longer barrel. But I wanted one gun to shoot, whether it was a appendix or outside the waistband. Realistically, I've got a video on me on my website shooting my 365 at a torso size target at 101 yards. So I'm more than effective with it. Why did I really want to carry more if I could still do what I needed to do with that size of pistol? And like if you're looking at like if you're humping stuff through the mountains of Afghanistan, would you rather take a 365 or would you rather take a big heavy 226 or M9 Beretta? Something that you're really not going to be using very often because you're shooting mountaintop to mountaintop. And in that case, most guys actually end up leaving their pistols back in the camp. But if I could shoot 100 yards with a 365, why would I carry a 226, something that weighs double that weight?
Yeah. I mean, so when I first got the 2.0, when they first started releasing them and I got the 5-inch barrel, man, I couldn't find a single holster. Everything was designed for the 4 1/4. And
Yeah.
it was all closed ends or complete shells. So this way, if I wanted to, I probably could, but now I'm having to wall her out. And I did that in one of my holsters, but then I found the issue I was having was because the front sight was hanging out and below the shell. Every time I'd go to
Mhm.
draw out, the front sight would grab, and now I'm having to fight it through. Now that we've moved to dots, because I mean, when that thing came out, I think yeah, throwing a dot on a pistol, you're having to knock out the rear sight, get that plate that slides in, and you mount in. So I mean, it wasn't a common thing. You weren't getting MOS cuts. Um, so I mean, now I guess that wouldn't even be an issue. You had taken all your sights off yours, right?
Yeah, I
Or
don't
all
run
your
any iron
irons?
sights on my primary defensive gun. I've never used them since I put the red dot on. Everybody tell you should go back and familiarize yourself with them. I shoot enough iron sight guns, whether customer guns or stuff like that, to kind of keep a happy engagement with the irons. But if my red dot goes down, I've got other reference points on my guns that'll give me effect about the 30 plus feet. And if my iron sights, and if I'm outside that 30 feet engagement, I more than likely don't need to be engaging anyways. Do I train past that 30 foot? Absolutely. But realistically speaking, if there's a situation where something's past 30 feet, there's very few margins of where I'm going to have the ability to engage without being criminally prosecuted. So that's something else to keep in mind. Just like people that'll tell you if you get mud on your optic, it's unusable. No, obviously nobody's ever showed you a occluded optic. If I have this IC in my target and this IC in my red dot, with occluded optic will demonstrate this. Basically, I can still see both targets, align my red dot with the target using both eyes, and still make very accurate engagements, bullseye engagements. That doesn't change anything. So really, I just didn't see the purpose of keeping the iron sights on my pistol. And the primary reason why I ended up taking them off is because I was just hit them on my hand occasionally with the fast-paced movement of the hands in the draw. That I just got tired of being having them on there and scraping myself, and I just got rid of them. I probably could have gone smaller and they would have been fine, never hit my hand again, and they could still be there. But it was more of a trial and error thing. I wanted to pull them off to see if I'd miss them. Right now, I'm not missing them by any stretch of the imagination. So until I miss them, I'm just going to keep them off.
Come on, man. You're telling me you're straying even further away from the military logic of one is none and two is one?
Well, again, I got the red dot. I got index points on the red dots. I got the side straps. I got the back strap. These are all aiming references that I can use to
Yeah.
actually engage a target at proximity distances. Granted, I have to practice this and know my limits, but that's what I do. I know what I'm capable of doing at what distance and what speeds.
Yeah, so one of the drills that I love doing, I don't remember what he calls it, but the tactical rifleman, where one of the videos they did, they started at 5 yards, and I think you get 5 shots. And if you miss all 5 shots, then you're out.
Mhm.
But you start at 5 yards. Once you hit, you move back 5 yards just to find where your limits are. I mean, I would really hope 5 yards, you hit steel first time, ding. 10 yards, hit steel first time, ding. But then you can find out, well, I made it out to 35. I hit, but it took 4 out of my 5 shots to hit. Now I moved it out to 40, and maybe I got lucky and I hit it in 3, but now I'm starting to see some variability in my accuracy. And is that a shot I'm willing to take that I know is going to hit in a stressful moment? Right now, there is no stress. It's me trying to show off with my boys and not choke. But an actual active threat, like you said, criminal prosecution. Are you going to hit innocent people in your drive to try to take down that threat if they're too far? You're not accounting for that adrenaline dump. So there's a lot of things that I don't think people realize go into it that have never been in that situation. They just, they always think they're going to rise to the occasion and be a hero.
Yeah, and no, it's funny is everyone says no one's gonna rise to be that hero, rise to the occasion to be the hero. What's funny is I was out at a Scott Jelinski class, and the gentleman Elijah Dickens, who took out the Indianapolis mall shooter with shooter had an AR-15, he had a pistol, and the engagement happened in about 40 yards. He shot 2 rounds, missed, started moving forward, engaged 8 more. All 8 after that hit him, and one hitting the AR-15, disabling him. Which is really funny because when we're at 15, 20 feet at Scott Jelinski's class, he was extreme low left, low left, low left, every single round. Nothing against Elijah, great dude. Didn't really take any formal training, kind of shot on his grandpa farms. I had some decent conversations with him. But somehow, some way, during that time at the Indianapolis Mall, he hit his engagement, he hit his target and engagement at anywhere between 30 to 40 feet with 8 of the 10 rounds. That's pretty freaking good. Now, I don't know what he did, if he just walked them in, what happened, but typically we do go by the logic of you're never going to be better in a real world engagement than you are in a training scenario. Especially for me, because I mostly shoot indoors, and being able to be at a nice 70-degree temperature, I find that I need to remind myself often that when I go into 30 to 40 to 50, even 60-degree weather, it is much different than being on that static range with 70-degree weather. The loss of dexterity, the movement, the grip pressures, those things do change. And if you're not used to them, that's delinquency, and you're never going to be able to perform the way you want to perform at different environments unless you've practiced all those different things in different environments and different temperatures and stuff like that. Back 3 or 4 years ago, I would run courses of fire where we'd put people's hands in cold water for 3 minutes, ice water, and they would be completely shocked at the loss of dexterity. And they would be, yeah, I usually manipulate the slide release with my thumb, but I felt that was inconsistent, and I had to go back to hard controls. All right, so maybe we should start training hard controls a little more often. Maybe it's point 0.1, point 0.2 seconds slower, but knowing 100% certainty that that slide's going forward when it needs to go forward might be worth that point 0.1, point 0.2 extra time.
Yeah. Or just the time you gain because now you're fumbling trying to get that thing that all adds up.
And breaking
Um,
grip and all those things.
so you were going the opposite way in the temperature scale. I'm gonna have to get you down up in to a Texas class because our first public class was rifle and it was 117 outside.
Outside? Oh,
Outside.
good gosh. Yeah, I don't have to worry about 117. Pretty normal here for me shooting is anywhere between 40 to about 80. And I say realistically, uh, we're more around those 50 to 60 degrees when we're outdoor shooting. Because I do shoot outdoors. It's just I shoot about every 3 days indoors. And I'd say I shoot once or twice a month outdoors.
Yeah, so we go down to a range that's um fairly well known. There's a YouTuber that uses it frequently for a lot of his videos. I love going out there. It almost brings me back to the military range days of just being outside, especially a rifle class. You get that first rifle round burn in the morning. You're like, ah.
It's a
Um,
familiar smell for sure.
Oh, and you know what? I don't get it with pistol, man. I get it with rifle. Every time we go out for rifle, the first couple rounds, I'm like, "Ah, that smells amazing." Pistol, we
Too
don't
much
get it.
wind. It's pushing it away. You got to go to an indoor range where it's
Gotta
louder and more dangerous.
Oh, man, so the range we were at, there was a dude flying a little two-seater helicopter around, like, I've never seen something like it before, but he was flying I'm like, "Dude, I would not be flying that helicopter around right now." You hear all the ricochets from the bays around you shooting steel. I'm like, "I would not be flying over this range right now. I would not." Uh,
Yeah, no, that's pretty often. I do a lot of classes out of Waterman, Illinois, at Roar Sports Club, and the way they push the ranges, they have like small ranges on the inside and the big ranges on the outside shooting over the inside ranges. And granted, those birds are 40, 50 feet high. They're tall.
yep.
But you can hear those rounds whizzing, whiz, 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 and you get used to it pretty quickly. But it's still like Interesting. Okay. This is, I've been in Iraq, and I'm not going to say I've been shot at, but I've had rounds in my direction. And it definitely sounds significantly different when they're that close versus, a little bit further away.
They've had the time to lose a little bit of velocity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, out there, man, you can if you take your ear pro off and you just listen, you hear the or the pew, and you just, oh man, if I start seeing dirt splashes, I'm out. I'm out.
I'll be looking to the top of the berms, and like I get to see just the dust clouds. And, I feel safe because, again, those berms are, 30, 40, 50 feet. So it doesn't worry me too much. It's just, if you're not used to it, it can definitely get to you.
Well, so out there, they use bundled tires and they're about 20, 30 feet tall. And there's probably like 10 stacks of tires between each range bay. Their tactical 270 bay, you can actually shoot into the tires. So you can actually open up and do a 270-degree field of fire. It's pretty nice. We have a class that, or not a class, more of a course that I've designed for us to be able to use out there. And when we tried to do it last year, it just got rained out. So much so everyone was mad. They're like, "Oh, train like you fight." I'm like, "Cool, none of you are fighting. Like literally none of you are fighting." And the mud down, especially there, it is the lowest part of the range. So everything feeds down into there. It's
Mhm.
just that thick, steal your shoe type of mud. I'm like, look, we cannot safely have shooters we know nothing about running around in a slip and slide with a loaded. Just, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put myself or anybody else's life at risk over potentially some fun. I'm just not going to do it. The course as designed was as fun as it is, and without the added bonus of slip and slide mud.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that stuff too, because, a lot of us do shoot outside a lot and are kind of more familiar with running around and finger discipline and stuff like that. But being a newer shooter or being having a group of guys, you don't know the level of competence because they're new to class or maybe they've only don't you have to be very, very careful when you start introducing that move and shoot in austere conditions such as that. Because
Oh
I
yeah.
can't tell you how many, I don't even really attend that many competitions. And I feel like I've seen at least three shooters fall India around into a wall because their finger was on or near that trigger when they dipped. And the moment they hit the ground, it just collapsed, hit the trigger, and discharged around.
Yep. And one of my
But
biggest
yeah, you gotta be
fears,
careful.
I mean, and one of my biggest fears is someone goes to slip and fall, or they go to drop the gun, and instead of let the ground, the firearm hit the ground, they're going to scramble to try to catch it, and you don't know where that
Mhm.
round's going to go when they squeeze and accidentally get that trigger. So following on, we got long range shooting, night vision, and then wrap it up with your rapid fire segment. I know you said you wanted to talk about some long range shooting basics and night vision. That is something I've got some night fox night vision, which obviously would be great for hunting, but you're not doing anything active with it. So let's go
Mhm.
through. I know I bend your ear a lot about long range shooting, so we can start there first. What do you got?
So long range shooting, personally, like me, I competed about 5 years in PRS, and I kind of started getting into the long range shooting back in like 2008. And for 4 years or so, I would just kind of create the smallest groups possible. And then from there, I found out, hey, I can shoot off different objects at really far distances and got into that. For long range shooting, you're obviously going to need a good rifle that's going to be sub MOA. That's one of the things that I look for in a rifle is that minimum sub MOA. Most modern rifles are going to be at least one MOA or smaller. The smaller that MOA, the better. With that, you want to make sure that you're shooting really good ammo. Like you can actually get away with a decent $600 gun, with a decent 1,000 to $2,000 optic. Kind of rule of thumb for me is I spend double the amount, not rule of thumb, but just kind of the way it seems, anyways, is I usually spend double on the optic versus the gun. Because the optic's what matters. You need precision in that optic when you're doing your clicks, moving from 600 yards to 1,000 yards. You need very precise incremental clicks, and cheaper scopes aren't as precise as higher end scopes.
Mm.
Other things for long range shooting is you want to make sure you're using good ammunition. I see a lot of people when they get that $3,000 rifle, $2,000 scope, or $3,000 scope. they go out and they buy the cheapest 6.5 Creedmoor 308, and then their gun's shooting 6-inch groups at 100 yards, and they don't understand why. And they're calling the manufacturer, "Why is my gun shooting this?" Well, that round doesn't work well in that gun. So you need to make sure you're getting into good match grade ammunition where you're going to have good consistency in the loading of that ammo. This same amount of powder and variations in each case.
So
Let's see what else is there.
are you still reloading?
I have all my gear, but no, I don't reload. In fact, I only reloaded probably 2 to 3, about 4 or 5 years, but about 2 to 3 years of my competition days. I just got tired of it. I did it often. I understood what needed to happen, but things still went wrong. And it aggravated me. I get aggravated very easily when a 3-way casing is stuck in a die and I can't rip it out. I end up throwing that die across the room. So I ended up stop reloading, and I just Palmetto State Armory. Pre-COVID, I bought about 3,000 rounds of 175 green gold medal match, which I found to work the best through most factory 3-way bolt actions. And I've still got quite a bit of that today. So I'm glad I made that investment because I paid $16 a box, where now it's going for $35 to $40 a box,
Woo!
which is pretty substantial difference, more than double. But I think having good, consistent ammo is going to be your next thing that you're going to want to make sure that you're doing for your rifle and for you, because you're going to pull hair out trying to understand why your fundamentals are good. No matter what your fundamentals are, if you're shooting crap ammo, it's not going to go where you want it to go.
Yeah,
Uh,
I remember Stimpy was reloading. Like that dude religiously reloaded. Like
yeah,
that.
but so for instance, to kind of give you an idea, for long range, it would take me about 4 hours for 100 rounds, not including the tumbling time. But just actual resizing the die, pushing the primers out, reprimering, putting powder in, changing the neck tension, doing a full length die on that, and all in all, it was about 4 hours for 100 rounds. If you're working 60 hours a week and you got kids and a family and stuff like that, there's just no time. At least I couldn't find the time to do it. But I do have buddies that enjoy it. In fact, I had one guy that would reload 2 hours every single night that competed with me, and he enjoyed it. And I finally got to the point where he started reloading my ammo for me. He was really good at it, and he enjoyed it. I didn't. I'm like, here, I'll support you a couple extra bucks, and you can reload my stuff for me.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for him that was part of his like meditation process. I mean, because I know full blown setup. I mean, he was pretty religious about it. The only thing I really hope not, but you remember how much of a chain smoker he was. I could see him sitting at his bench with a cigarette, Dale Gribble style, hanging out of his mouth as he's reloading, and I'm like, I really hope not. I really hope not. But I could see
I
it.
actually I actually had a buddy that did smoke cigars. He was an older gentleman, about 60, so you would think he'd be mature enough to know this, but he was smoking cigars while he reloaded, and the ash fell into a open 1-pound jug of powder, shot a flame up, crisped his face, got rid of all the hair that he had on his face and on the top of his head. Nothing crazy damage, but I asked him, I was like, "What were you thinking?" He was like, "I wasn't." And he had been doing it for years. He had got complacent with it. I'm sure in the beginning he was very careful, and then over the time,
Just
he
complacency
left a
kills, man.
bottle of opened powder, and just a single ash one in there was enough to detonate that. And you know, I think he actually got out of reloading after that.
So, and I don't think he does. I just knowing how much of a smoker he was, I can see it. I can visualize it happening.
Oh, absolutely. Well, hopefully that's one of those mistakes you walk away, you get a second chance on the first time and you never repeat it, man. Because
Oh
that's
yeah,
just a dumb mistake.
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. So night vision. I know this is something we talked about a little bit. Do you actually got the quad tube, or was that something you were just posting on social media?
No, I don't have $46,000 to drop for quad tubes. So I've got a really good friend. He's in the industry. He used to build his own. Now he just sells factory direct L3 Harris's and stuff like that. But I run personally a PVS. I think I have them somewhere down here, but a set of PVS 14s. that are white phosphorus unfilmed. They ran me around 43 to 4,500 bucks, and then I run a laser on the end of my rifle, full power pack. Paid new $2,500. That goes for like 1,200, but since it's not open to the civilian population, you got to pay a little bit more to get it. But some new things coming down the night vision pipeline that my buddy's been telling me is night vision is about to skyrocket in price exponentially within the next couple months. L3 has announced that they're not going to be selling the parts of, and hopefully I put this out correctly, but from my understanding, L3 is not going to be putting out the parts necessary for nods guys to like start building again. So like PVS 14's new price went from like 43 to 45 are going to be up to like 55 to 6,000 um, for the 14s and stuff like that. PVS 15s and quad tubes and stuff like that will probably stay the same price. From his understanding, they're not going to have a jump influx. But night vision, I think I'm going to kind of get out of it. There's been no money in it for me. I ran a set for 6 years, 2 different actually about 8 years, 2 different times. The first time I ended up selling the set because nobody else had night vision. I was a solo guy trying to have fun by myself because nobody could afford it at the time. So I sold that, and then it seemed like everybody was getting back into it, so I bought a set to get back into it, and now I find myself picking up my nods maybe twice a year to go walk around the neighborhood and look at the stars. Maybe every year and a half to shoot if I get out and go do that. But it's such a niche thing and requires so much money. Like I have probably 8 to 10 grand wrapped up in night vision stuff that I use every 2 years, and that just simply doesn't make any sense. So that's honestly something I'm probably gonna get out of in the next few years and throw that money into something else because not a single person's asked me to do training with them night vision wise. Going off my curriculum, I'd say 80% of my income comes from pistol, and the other 20% is probably long range, or 15% long range, then 5% rifle. Really, very, very little rifle. Most of it's pistol. But night vision, if you have the financials to get into it, it's absolutely a lot of fun, but it does take away from your other training opportunities. And that's something you've got to understand as well is if you want to get really good under nods, you got to get really good in daylight first to where you can do it in a habitual manner and you don't need to actually think about or see what you're doing. Because think of your nods as like a focal plane of a camera. You're going to be focused as far out as you can to get clarity of enemy targets and stuff like that. So everything up close, as far as your magazine reloads and your sights and everything, is going to be somewhat blurry. So you
Yep.
have to be very familiar on the reloads and how to do everything, and be able to perform those actions in the dark under nods. And I think a lot of people jump into that community a little prematurely. And if you do, that's okay. But don't neglect your simple things to go straight into the hard things because it's not going to fare well with you. But if you can afford the nods, go out and get them, have fun. It's definitely a different world. It's certainly a superpower. But
So
for
do you
me, I just don't find the value in it anymore. And don't have the time to utilize them for the expense that I have in them, me personally.
do you think it's the video game syndrome a little bit? You know,
As far as
call it.
why people get into them,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you see some of the
absolutely.
super videos, but I mean, for me, it's kinda like, automatic fire. Once you've done it, like, I'm not gonna say it's not cool, it's not fun, but, man, it's so much better when it's somebody else's ammo when I'm not paying for it. Like, I don't
Agreed
have a
100% to
day-to-day
that.
need for it. I don't have a day-to-day need for it. I don't.
I think it's definitely video games, and, also the LARP or live role action role
Yeah.
playing, um, being able to go out and do fun stuff even as a kid, we played cowboys and Indians, army soldiers and stuff
Yep.
like that. Even as we go into adults now, we can do that same thing with actual really expensive gear and have a lot of fun to do it. And a lot of these things roll over to everyday stuff if you're really particular in your training regimens and stuff like that. So I mean, like I said, if you got the money and you have the interest, hop into it. But if you really want to get good at things, you're really going to have to do it a lot. And I'm just not putting in the amount of time that I necessary to get really good at it because my demand is on pistol, and that's where I spend most of my time versus nods. So when my buddies are like, "Hey, let's go shoot nods," well, it's like, "Hey, I need to go work on some more pistol stuff to maintain my career choice to be able to teach and do the best of my ability for my
Mhm.
students as I can." And then when I get extra time, then I'll go play with nods. So I got to, you know, be careful of my priorities. You know, very clearly, my priority is pistol. That's, like I said, 80% plus of my income, and that's where people would expect me to be able to diagnose them and perform myself is in pistol.
Definitely. Except for me, man, all I got is about a year and a half ago, Night Fox came out with like their new um digital night vision system. I mean, it's a video camera that uses infrared with a super sensitive sensor. It works great for hunting style stuff, and when we go out and do our hog hunts and everything, it meets its objective there, but I'm definitely not gonna be doing any room clearing or anything like that. The delay between what's actually happening and what you're seeing is way too much.
Is it
Like, even if
really? Okay, I have
yeah.
no experience with the digital stuff. I've heard some stories, but I've never actually even seen a pair.
So I would say it's no different than like grab your cell phone, turn the camera on, and simply use the camera or what you're seeing on the screen as your view. So walk around the house and just that minute delay and motion blur is enough to get you pretty cattywampus. So if you try to even jog with it, I mean, it's just all over the place and you're seeing streaks on the screen. But to sit there and be stalking, a patch of corn that you've thrown out to draw the hogs in or something, it works just fine. Um, and like you said, it is kind of a superpower. Definitely nowhere even close. PVS 14s or true night vision that's using tubes. Um, but for that minimal purpose, and at least down here, there's a group. They actually get together at least twice a month, and they go do night walks and they're really strict on no visible light, so no red, like, no visible light. So you're welcome to come out there if you're just going blind, but it's pretty dark out there in those woods, so you're gonna want something. I haven't tried it with the night fox yet. I do want to go out there and meet with them just to see how do they perform through a walk in the woods. Um, but at least down here, there is a community that does get together fairly frequently to at least, go do hikes in the woods and stuff using nods, so it's pretty sweet. Um,
Yeah, we have the same thing out here where we go do walks in the woods, and it's actually quite fun, man. Just walking around with some homies in the woods in the dark. Again, just kind of, I don't want to say playing Army Ranger and stuff like that, but it's fun to just get a group of guys and go out and experience something that not a lot of society has actually experienced. And that's walking through the woods and nods. And if you've never look through nods, you're gonna trip and fall your first couple of times of walking through the woods, depending on the steep angles and stuff like that.
oh yeah,
Because the
especially
depth
single tube.
perception is very, very limited to non-existent on there, and it takes some getting used to. So be careful out there if you're walking through the woods, some switchbacks and stuff like that. You can easily, very, very easily fall off a mountain if you're not careful.
So you're saying you're getting out of or thinking about just getting out of it. So you're saying the combo of adding thermals to your PBS 14's overkill, at least right
So,
now?
I mean, if I was definitely sticking in the industry, the thermal overlay is phenomenal when it comes to nods, and you got thermal separate that just reads temperature. But I don't know yet if I'm going to sell all my stuff because it is a fun and great superpower, and I'm not hurting for money, so it's not
Yeah,
like I've got to sell it to get money. But it is a lot of money for me to have attached to something that I'm not using extremely often.
understood.
So I haven't come to the conclusion what I'm going to do yet. I like one day I wake up, I'm selling it. The next day I'm waking up and I'm keeping it. So it just really depends because every time I actually go to really truly think about selling, I'm like, I don't think I'm quite there yet. It is fun, but like the same reason I had my Accuracy International, I had this rifle I ended up selling for 18,500. And the reason I bought this rifle was originally so I could have a 338 to shoot for miles, and then I had smaller calibers to shoot for PRS or for more realistic, fun engagements. I shot the 338 out of it twice out of 4 to 5 years. So why am I sitting on an $18,500 rifle that I'm using that I can downsize, get something smaller and use more often while putting money in the bank or to something else because I'm not using the 3 blade Lapua aspect of it at once every couple years. So I ended up selling that and I got a stupid good deal on a Tic Tac A1 with $3,000 scope. I got that package for about $2,500. It made sense, so I did it. But I'm always kind of a value guy too. You know, what kind of, if I spend this much money on something, does it make sense? Or am I just going to sit on this and not use it? And it's just got to make sense for me.
Dude, I'm totally a value guy too. Uh, One of the things I look at is how much work do I need to put in to even afford that? How many hours did I have to do my thing in order to go and achieve that thing that I wanted? I remember being an hourly employee and something was $100. Like, all right, so I need to work 5 hours. Sorry,
Yes.
6 hours after you take out taxes just to afford that thing. So I'm always looking at that as the cost to benefit ratio of, was 8 hours of my life really worth that thing? So that's one
I
of
agree.
the
I'm the same way. I do the same thing. I do it by hourly. Like, okay, if I want this, I got to work this many hours. And also, I do like if I want something over a certain price, I'll usually take that price and kind of equate it to a form of days. And I take that many days and I think about it. Like, for instance, my AI, like before I bought it, I remember I was on my way to my cabin in North Georgia and me and my wife were just getting married. And I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to buy this rifle for $7,500. You okay with that? He's like, yeah, you're rarely responsible with your finances. And if you feel that it's something you want or need and you can justify it and it makes sense, buy it. And my wife's always let me, for the most part, buy whatever I want. Um, I've always had the money to pay the bills and do that, and there's never ever been any worries. I'm financially responsible, so she knows that. So she's never really come back and say, I don't think you should buy this because it's very, very expensive. She knows I usually make my money back or plus more in time as well with most things that I sell and buy as well.
Oh, yeah, I've always tried to be that way. I don't Did you ever see my printer when we were in Wisconsin?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I mean, I still have it. I'm looking at it right now. I've got a large format printer that's almost 6 feet long, can print up to 44
Oh
inches.
yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, man, that thing paid for itself several times over, and I need new print heads for it now, and they're like 250 each, and there's 2 print heads in it, but I've more than made my money back on that thing when we were doing our photography, and even now, like the canvas behind me, I printed that.
Nice. That looks good.
So,
Yeah, that looks good. I like that. And that's just printed on a actual canvas
yep,
thing. You just stapled up and built it up, built the
yeah,
frame.
yeah, just built the
Nice.
frame out of, so I usually get 1 by 4s, and then I rip strips out of it to create the frame and then stretch the fabric over it, but it'll do, like, regular pictures, so regular glossy stuff, canvas. Um, if I had a storefront that I wanted to, like the perforated window cling stuff, so you can see the image from the outside, but on the inside, you can look out and still see outside. It can print on that stuff, so it's pretty versatile. I just like I said, I need to get new print heads for it now. I wanted to
When you
print
get
my
new
own
print heads, let me know. I'll pay you and make a little trigger jerk when I can hang up somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, you and Maggie got some photos you want printed and blown up for the house. Let me know. I can print all that stuff.
Yeah, we actually, I would say we probably have 7 or 8 of them, and they're not expensive or they are expensive to do.
So they're not though. The
No, I
reason
mean, at my standpoint, because when you go
Yeah.
through JC Penney's, it's expensive.
Yeah, well, it's because 'cause they're also paying for the overhead of someone sitting there all day
Exactly.
waiting for it. Where, like I said, for me, the most expensive thing and why I need new print heads is about once a week or every other week, you really need to run something through the print heads to keep them clear. It
Mhm.
sat for like 6 months. I had nothing I needed to print and just got busy with work. So the ink dried on the print heads, and I tried to clear them out, and they're beyond saving at this point. So need new print heads, but
Gotcha.
once I get them, I'll be back in printing. But yeah, that thing has brought money back 5, 6 times, or
Yeah, we
five,
have a
six
big
times
printer
fold.
at work. We have a big printer where we use to do targets. It doesn't do the oil or the paintings like that or anything, but we have this like really big 6-foot printer, and we print all our targets and other things on it. It's actually nice to have it, even though we pay more for targets printing our own versus just buying them.
I was gonna say, so for me, I thought about using that as a part of the reason to just run the ink through, but the cost per target, where if I'm buying them in bulk, you can get them what, 20, 30 cents a piece.
Yeah.
It's almost like $3 to $4 per target when
Yeah,
I'm
so that's
printing
way
it.
more expensive. So we
So,
pay per print, like I think 37, where we can get it for about 20 cents. So it's only a couple cents more per target. But what's cool about it is if we go over, the overage charge is actually very minimal. So we actually get better deals the more we print. And
hmm,
once we hit that overage, so it actually almost equals out and is actually worth it in the end, as long as we're going over.
hmm. Do you know what kind of printer it is offhand?
Oh, I have no idea. It's a $40,000 printer.
Oh, so is it a press printer or is it like actually inkjet?
It's, I believe, inkjet. So it's just like bottom column has two flows of paper that come up, and it's just regular ink. It doesn't do any special images or anything that clear by any stretch of the imagination. It
Hmm,
just prints very, very large, like 6-foot size pieces of paper.
gotcha. So maybe I don't know. So, like I said, my printer is actually designed for photography. So
Yeah,
maybe
this one's not.
I would say so maybe the ink volume and the paper I got to buy for it just makes it. I mean, like this behind me, I print for like $7, and JC Penney's going to charge you what? Almost. That's
60,
about a two by
probably
three.
75.
Yeah, so anywhere between 60 to $100 just for something that's 2 foot by 3 foot. So
Yep.
I mean, and that's why we ended up getting it. We were doing all the photography for like all the families and stuff while we were in Chicago. And to pay a print lab plus the markup for us to make money on it, I was like, well, I can just get the printer and charge less than what the print lab's already charging me and still make all that money. So yeah, we ended up going and getting that. Uh, let's wrap it up. We got our rapid fire section. I know we answered these questions last time, but we lost it. So favorite pistol and why?
Favorite pistol and why is, I would say my favorite pistol.
It doesn't have to make sense, just favorite overall.
I would say my favorite pistol is the CZP-10. Why? Because it's cheap. I'm very effective with it. It kind of shows people when I'm teaching them that they don't need to go towards that $6,000 to $7,000 class of gun in order to achieve the results that they want. I can't tell you how many times I'll be shooting next to people and they'll come over and be like, "Man, you're shooting all the way at 25 yards and holding a 4-inch group. What pistol is that?" Well, it's a $400 pistol with about $500 or about $1,000 of accessories on it, such as optics and stuff like that. They'd be like, "Oh, man, I can't shoot my $7,000 pistol that well." It just means you need more time on gun, shoot more rounds, get more training, and you'll have no problem doing it. But my favorite pistol, I think, is the CZP-10. I've got 30,000 rounds between two of them. And then before that, I ran the 365, which I really liked. Definitely not my favorite pistol due to the trigger return spring breaking about every 4,500 rounds.
Okay. Best tip for shooting under stress.
Best tip for shooting under stress: take a deep breath if you have the time before the engagement. This is going to calm your nerves so much if you have that time, but also not overreacting. Your initial action may be the correct one, but if it's not, it's going to be a bad day. So try to take the time that you have to process the information that you have and not overreact into a situation.
Okay. And then top 3 must-have shooting accessories.
A shot timer for one. The shot timers don't lie, and that's an excellent way to induce stress on yourself because when you're actually tracking times, man, if you're not meeting the times, that's an absolute stressor right there. So shot timer, optics on your guns. If you're not running optics, you're behind the times. It's time to get back. It's time to get onto an optic. I know my first optic that I hopped on was a Romeo Zero on the 365s, and I absolutely hated it. And it pushed me away for a year or two, and then I actually got some of a better quality, and then I was like, "Oh, okay, this makes sense." So try to hop on a good optic. Don't let your first optic be a crappy opted to kind of distort your decision making skills on that. And then the third, I'm going to say, I'm going to say ports. Some type of recoil dampening, whether it's a chunk port or, I run the Lucky 7 ports. I think the added benefit of reducing recoil on when you shoot a large number of rounds has a effect on the body in time that causes arthritis and other pains and issues as well. So having something that mitigates as much recoil and it helps you to be as effective as possible without the stress on the body, I'm going to say is a big bonus, is a big plus for me.
Awesome. So I'm gonna say for me, favorite pistol. I mean, I've fallen in love with the Smith Wesson 2.0. After going through the armorers class and everything else, I just recently bought the aluminum version, and I just got the optic put on it. Haven't even had a chance to go out to the range and zero it, but shooting with irons, and that's where earlier in the conversation we were talking about, going back and forth, and I noticed that between man, for the last 3 or 4 years, it's been nothing but my red dot on my 2.0C, and that's been my everyday carry. It's even been my duty gun, and then going and just shooting that one with irons, I noticed some degradation in speed, but not much. I was still faster now with irons than I was before when I started using the red dot, and I think some of that just became trusting that things were where they needed to be. Um, Best tip for shooting under stress for me, I'm gonna say same thing. If you can, take that deep breath. Don't let the tunnel vision set in. Maintain your situational awareness of everything that's going on. Make sure you're making that right decision. And then top three most shooting accessories, I'm gonna say definitely optic, a quality holster, and if you're brand new to shooting and you haven't invested in someone to teach you how to shoot, maybe a training tool. Definitely something like the shot timer, like you had mentioned. I just got those Shooter Global ones, and I love how they pair with your phone so you can record what you're doing with your times. So when you're setting PRs, you can see exactly what that PR looked like. What did you do differently than everything else that made that PR happen? And I think that visual feedback, I think people are too afraid to record themselves while they're training. Like, look, professional athletes watch tape. What did I do well? More importantly, what did I do wrong? And being able to see that, and like if you're looking in a mirror, I mean, if you're doing the front on, you get a little bit, you're going to see so much more in a side view, and you can't really and get the same mechanics. So I think being able to pair the shot timer and that it's sensitive enough to pick up your dry fire, because I think that's what you're using too, right? The Shooter's Global.
I've got both. I've got the Go and the big $300 one. I use that $300 one for on the range, and I use my Go for dry fire that I just keep at home. But yeah, I use both, and they're both phenomenal.
So I have, what is it? You're talking like the big blue or green one?
No, I have the big blue too. I'm probably just gonna donate that one, but Shooters Global makes the big one with the screen that's,
Gotcha.
like an oval, and then they have the one that's more of a boxy with a big screen just on top called the Go, and that one's
Okay.
150 where the other one's 300. So, we just became dealers, and so I had the ability to get that Go for fairly cheap,
Nice.
and for about $100, it made sense to just buy it for a specific purpose to keep at home so I don't have to bring my other one home to work, and I could just leave it at home and then dry fire under times as necessary.
Yep. So we use a bunch of the goes out at our ranges just so we have that beep that's out there.
Yeah.
We're definitely checking time, but when you got 6, 7 students shooting all at once, you're really not going to be able to tell whose shot was what. You might be able to thumb through and figure out first and last, but the shots in the middle, they're gonna start getting lost. But at least gives us that beep, and we can start pushing and letting students know, hey, first shot was here, last shot was here, everyone else was somewhere in between. Where were you? But definitely tools like that. And I know you said you're not a big fan of things that are too hokey, but I think for someone that's maybe too nervous or doesn't have the funds to keep going to an instructor, something like the Mantis X is helpful because it's telling you the things that you are doing, the things you can improve. I'm going to say a live coach is always going to be better because you're going to get that live feedback, but it's always a good thing to have. So, anything else before we wrap up, man?
No, I just wanted to support your decision on the M&P. That's going to be my next go-to gun as well. That's a phenomenal gun, phenomenal manufacturer. The only reason I haven't gone to it yet is because I want to get a higher round count on these CZP 10s. I want to put them through the paces and kind of see how long they last. Like I said, I've got about 30,000 rounds between two of them right now, and I'm actually getting ready to send the grip out to get textured on one of them. So I'm excited about that. The grip on one of them is just so smooth because it's got so much oil on it. Still rock it, still do well, but let's see what I can do with the extra texture on the grip and see if it'll lock it in even more. I'm
There you go.
excited.
So I have to update my round count book, but I think my 2.0 C is somewhere around 17,000 rounds right now. No
Good stuff.
issues, no broken parts. Shoot, the only ammo, and I think it was primers, not the ammo itself or not the firearm. I had a bunch of Freedom munitions, a bunch of their remanufactured ammo. And it was during COVID, and I think they were just using some pretty cheap primers because I'd say out of 55 out of that box were bad. Every single box I had. So I made really good use of tap rack drills. um, but other than that, no, my 2.0, man, it is rocked hard. And I'm kind of at that. I'm glad I got the new one because I plan on really abusing the crap out of that one and
You got
using
the chunk port one, right?
the what?
Did you get the chunk port or did you get no ports?
No ports.
No ports? Okay.
So
Because they got the carry comps, which I think I might move to if I use it as an offensive gun. But if I use it for like a USPSA gun, I'm gonna get the one with no ports.
okay. Yeah, so the aluminum one I have no ports, and that's the one that I plan on now beating the crap out of and letting my other one go back to being my duty weapon. Because 'cause I'm kind of at that point now. I'm 17,000 rounds in. Do I really wanna be carrying the thing that I've been beating the crap out of and testing and need it? And that be the time that something decides to finally break and fail. So I've been on the fence, and now that I have the other one, I'm kind of excited. So I can beat the crap out of that one. I can refurbish and new spring kits and everything in the everyday duty carry one. But dude, it has rocked steady. Not a single problem or complaint that I have. The only thing I did, and I'm gonna recommend you do, is when you do go, make sure it's got the Gen 2 trigger. I don't like the split trigger.
I
Um,
agree.
it's got more play and it's grittier to me. The flat
Yeah, I
face
want the
trigger.
basic. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh yeah, so the flat face trigger, man. That's I love the new version that they've pushed out with their 2.0 trigger.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I've been looking at them for sure. The ones coming through the shop that I work at part time, and basically, I just want the basic M&P with the performance trigger, not the two-stage hinge trigger. I definitely agree on that. I'm not a fan of it, but that 4 1/4 is smooth, man. It's very, very smooth. It is a good gun, and it rocks hard.
Oh yeah, love it. All right, man. So tell everyone where they can find you. I know you're uploaded up in the Chicagoland area, but go ahead and let all the viewers know where they can find you, all your contacts, and your area that you teach in.
Yeah, so I'm actually located in Grays Lake, Illinois. You can find me at triggerjerk.com, G instead of a J. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on other platforms, but mostly just update Facebook. But I do most of my trainings either southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois at North Shore Sports Club. I've got multiple ranges in the area that go anywhere from simple pistol bays with steel all the way out to 1,000 yard private land with 30-inch steel going all the way out to 1,000 yards. So that can be fun as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. You've been watching Overwatching Out. This has been Keith. Train hard, train smart, and I just stole John Lovell's closing. So let me try that again. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Keith with Not Hawk Alliance, and you've been watching Overwatching Out.